Hi there, this is Solitude from Solitude Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is The Nowhere Inn from 2020. This is a film by Bill Benz, but it's really a film by the musical artist St. Vincent, or Annie Clark, as is her real name. And this is a part documentary of life on the road and part fiction. It also stars Carrie Brownstein, who is her friend. Dakota Johnson has a cameo as her lover. And this is pretty much about the line between the artist persona and real life. It's also, I'm not sure it's a homage to Mulholland Drive, but there's a lot of Lynchian things in the film. Now, I can't really be that objective about this film because I'm a huge fan of St. Vincent, or Annie Clark as she's known off the stage. I just think she's fantastic. She is a bit of a chameleon. Each album is a kind of different persona. She's a bit like Bowie in that sense, or David Bowie. And this film follows her on her Mass Seduction album tour. And it starts off as, a project to get to know the real St. Vincent. But as the film proceeds, Annie Clark and her friend who's making the film fall out, and the lines between the stage persona and real life and reality kind of blur. I mean, being objective for a second, it does try a little bit too hard, and it's perhaps a little bit too pleased with itself at times. But again, I can't really be that objective about it, because Annie Clark is just fantastic. If you see any interviews with her, she's just naturally kind of funny. But as with all artists who perform under a different name, or solo artists that perform under a different name than their real name, there is part of that is a projection. Part of that persona does things that perhaps they wouldn't do as themselves, even though obviously that persona is part of them. The best kind of example, or one of the best kind of examples, is Alice Cooper, who Vincent Fournier, which is his real name, created Alice as a character who could do anything and push the boundaries, but that wasn't necessarily Vincent, even though Alice was obviously part of Vincent. And he talks now about how Alice became, 95% of Vincent, and there was only like 5% of Vincent actually in Alice Cooper. He's happy to talk about albums that he made in the late 70s, early 80s that he has no recollection of making, because he was so wasted on drugs and alcohol that he can't actually remember making those albums. And that's where the Alice Cooper persona just became larger than life and took over his life as Vincent Fournier. Now obviously, if you don't know, St. Vincent doesn't obviously do the things that Alice Cooper did, but it's just parallels of, as a solo artist, performing under another name. You know, Annie Clark doesn't perform as Annie Clark, she performs as St. Vincent. And the documentary starts with Carrie Brownstein, you know, expecting the usual rock and roll excesses on the bus, but Annie Clark has perfectly, you know, has been happy to say that she's a bit of a nerd and she's not very exciting away from the stage. And then we get the obvious disappointment by the filmmaker or the documentary filmmaker, because she's finding the subject isn't that exciting or doing crazy on the road tour type things. So she encourages her to act a bit more like St. Vincent off stage, which goes into quite amusing moments. And then St. Vincent, as the film proceeds, kind of takes over, and St. Vincent wants to change the narrative of the project that they're doing and take it in a different direction, showing a false family, until it gets to the point where the filmmaker springs a surprise on her, which she doesn't appreciate, and then that pushes the friendship to the limits and the project to the limits. The film is opened with St. Vincent in a limousine driving through the desert, and rather amusing conversations with the chauffeur who doesn't know who she is. And he says, "Oh, my son's in a band, he's on the phone," and he doesn't know who you are either. And that is tailed at the end of the film with a Lynchian Mulholland Drive type deal involving the documentary filmmaker. So again, I can't be objective about it. I enjoyed it a lot, but again, I really like St. Vincent's music. Obviously, after Mass Seduction, she did the remix album Mass Education, and then in 2021, she did Daddy's Home, which is a 70s inspired. So Mass Seduction is very, she was into kind of latex outfits on stage, whereas Daddy's Home is her 70s kind of homage. She's also done a album with David Byrne, which is absolutely fantastic. You can look up YouTube for the video to Who, which is one of the best music videos you'll ever see. She does have a lot in common with David Byrne as far as, you know, musically she does a bit of everything. Again, she's a bit of a chameleon. She doesn't do the verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, verse, fade out song structure, very much like David Byrne's solo stuff. Her lyrics don't necessarily rhyme, or the way David Byrne sometimes has like kind of stream of consciousness lyrics. She does use symbolism and lots of other good things in her lyrics. They're not always straightforward. She also has her self-titled, which was before Mass Education. That's the deluxe version, that's the standard version. And Strange Mercy is fantastic, as is Actor, which is suitable for this film. And Marry Me is absolutely wonderful as well. I would recommend all those albums because I think she is absolutely wonderful. She's a fantastic guitarist as well. She's got her own signature guitar. For a St. Vincent's fan, it's a lot of fun. again, for somebody who has no idea who St. Vincent is, what her music is like, I suppose it might be a little bit of an oddity, but it looks good, sounds good. Again, it has some nice imagery, but there's a huge debt to David Lynch. I think St. Vincent's talked about David Lynch in interviews, and he does have a huge influence over certain scenes in the film, and just that odd kind of tone. There's a wonderful scene where she arrives behind a character who looks like her, and every time she tries to turn around, the hair is exactly the same all the way around. She doesn't have a face, which is actually quite unsettling. There's lots of wonderful outfits that St. Vincent goes through during the film. And again, is it the best film about the line between the artist and persona, off stage, on stage, the expectations of the audience when they meet a star or a celebrity? Perhaps not, but if you're a fan of St. Vincent, you'll get a lot of joy and pleasure out of it, especially when her fake invented Texan family do a wonderful rendition of her song Years of the Tiger, which is quite wonderful. And if you're not a fan of St. Vincent or don't know who she is, perhaps you're not going to get as much pleasure from it. Again, my channel may be a niche of a niche of a niche, and this film is certainly for a very niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche audience. But it just gives me an excuse to talk about St. Vincent for 10 minutes. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen The Nowhere Inn and what you think of it, and what's your favourite St. Vincent album, and hopefully you'll join me again for slightly less random reviews. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, saying farewell.